On that note, because we've got an hour, I was just going to say, considering it's Friday night, and rather than starting another new game, I'll do some ghost story reading from a Reddit page or a Reddit section that apparently does really scary. My brain has just got really scary stories, so I thought I'd give this a go. So if I get the music going, I'm trying to think of one. What's this one? I have so much like no. This one's quite good. That one's good. I like that one. That's only 20 seconds long. That's the only problem with that one. That's it. Here we go. Frambeau. I think I've heard of that one. That's another point and click one, isn't it? But like in a cartoony style. So, but anyway, let's get to reading some. But post the link to it, and I'm pretty sure that's the one I was thinking of. But yeah, post a link in the Discord. But I'm pretty sure that was the one I've got in my head. How's the sound? Is it too loud or is it? I'll turn it down slightly. Let me know. But anyway, right, so sounds good. Yeah, Paranormal Sight is your one. Didn't have to redeem it because I'm reading it already. Cross my heart. What do you want to know, Cyangin? What do you want me to spill the beans on? As the music starts. Oh, for God's sake, Cyangin. Rate the games out of 10 for each entry. Okay, I need to open the folder to remember which one's which. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? 1 second. Right. So, I think 5 days is definitely my favourite. Thank you for the hydrate. So yeah, I think the first one is definitely my favourite. I'd give that probably an 8 out of 10. I wouldn't give it a 10 out of 10 because of the controls sometimes just got on my nerves a bit, where it was just so finicky. But I loved how it introduced you to the series, and just like the general storyline, I thought it was really good. It's a great redeemer. What would I put next? I think Notes. Chilby's Notes, I think, would be then my second one. And again, I think I give it an 8 out of 10. And I think that's because there's just a lot of reading to do, and also where it was just pure keyboard, it got a bit confusing at times. But I loved again just the story and the creep factor. I think with Notes, I thought it was really well done. Yeah, I thought they were really well done. 7 Days. I think would be the next one. Again, it was a really good story. It was kind of like 5 days, but set in the future. But yeah, I think I'd give it like a 7 out of 10, and I think that's more because I'm just not a fan of sci-fi. Like, I don't really do space. So I've never found space as a concept in terms of people being on a spaceship. I've never found it to be creepy. I've found it can be horrifying because, like, if you watch the film that it's based on, which I can't think of the bloody name for, that was a pretty horrific film, and I did find it terrifying. But yeah, it's not my kind of scary stuff. Very impressive considering it was made by one guy in the early 2000s. Yes. Blasphemy of not liking sci-fi. I don't know. It's just I'm just so into history that futuristic stuff just doesn't do anything for me. It's too clean. It's too can't think of the like sanitized. I just can't be dealing with machinery and space and science. Event Horizon. Thank you, Jay. I did really like that film. I thought the concept was interesting, but yeah, again, I think the only films that I like that are sci-fi are like the Alien movies. I really like the Alien movies. Don't ask me why. I just thought they were really, really well done. But yes, I think that's why 7 Days would be there. And then my least favourite would be this one. But I'm only doing that because I think it ties up the ends to the story. And it just was it was like a real sort of information dump. So I think it just really sort of blew my mind a bit. Like I said, I was just getting really confused by how much I was reading and who was supposed to be who. So I was sitting there reading it being like, what the fuck, who the fuck am I supposed to be now, and everything like that. So it was great. But yeah, it just was a bit much to take in. You need to do a lot in such a short amount of time. Yeah. So I think that's probably my least favourite, and it didn't really, again, it had the same feel as 7 Days in terms of there wasn't, because it was all in like a bunker, so it had that futuristic style to it, which is, again, to me, like sci-fi-ish. So, yeah. So I'd give that, again, a 7 out of 10. So the first two, 8 out of 10, definitely. And it's more just the controls that let them down, but I thought the story was great. And then the second two, 7 out of 10. And like I said, the 7 Days is purely, I think, one, like the whole like jumping in time, I think, confused me, and also the fact it's sci-fi, which I don't really appreciate as a ghosty story. And this one, 6 Days of Sacrifice, because yeah, it was just too much of an info dump, I think. The story overall I thought was brilliant. That's the sort of like story I like. Alexa, stop. It's the sort of story I like in terms of where it just has so much depth to it, in terms of the fact it like literally goes back to like ancient times. I love those sort of ghost stories. That's why one of my favourite ghost stories is actually, if you ever get to read it, it's like absolutely fantastic. It's Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad, and it's about a guy that finds this ancient whistle. He's not an archaeologist, but his friend's an archaeologist, and he goes sort of looking around this old grave site because his friend said he wants to explore there, but he says he'll go and have a look to see if it's actually worth going. And yeah, he finds this old whistle, and he blows the whistle, and he gets this like spirit come after him, and it's like, when you read it, it's absolutely terrifying. But yeah, but it's just that whole sort of unknown ancient origins, like this ancient evil buried in the soil and everything. I love all that sort of stuff. I would recommend watching the Ego review of these games and listen to him talk about his ideas and stuff. Yeah, definitely. I'd like to do that. But I'd love to come up with a ghost story like that, but I just don't. I can't do dialogue. My problem is I can come up with a story. I've sort of, as Jay probably knows, poor thing, I've come up with so many stories in my head over the years, but I just don't write them down on paper because I just can't do dialogue. I can do universes and plots and stuff, but yeah, I just can't have two people talking together. I don't know how real people interact. It's not my thing. So if I could get someone like who's good at writing scripts, then it would be great. I was gonna say, I write the plot and then you do the dialogue. There we go, done. Writing team sorted. Then she said, then he said, then she said, then he said. Yeah, I just can't do it. I can't do small talk. Because I'm just not a social person. I can't do it. But anyway, yes, I would definitely recommend those. If anyone actually said about games they want to play, like scary games, I'd definitely recommend that one. Because it is fun, and it really sort of sucks you in as well to the storyline, I think. It's just, I think the last one was just a bit too much of an info dump for me. But yes. Anyway, I think it's worth turning out the lights to read these spoopy stories. Hopefully they're spoopy. I haven't had a chance to read them yet, so I don't know. Alexa, turn off office light. Am I going to regret this? Alexa, turn off office light. There we go. No, that's not too bad, is it? What's that white glow, though? Behind me. Oh, that's a printer. How's the music for everyone? Or do we need something a bit more spoopy? I am the white glow. It's just I see two eyes just like glowing behind me. I think we need something more like droney rather than like, so it's got quite a beat to it. What's this one? No. If that was like just a regular. Ooh. Thunderstorm. What music? Can't you hear anything? Or now it's ambience. Be the least scary ghost ever. I'd be like, I see you, girl. I see you. Hey, girl, hey. Right, okay. So. Let me try and find one. What's this one? USSR found something disturbing under the Pacific. So you walk in there, you walk on. Right. Okay, how long is this? What a discovery. Okay. This happened even before Gorbachev took power. The first ones to find it were workers from an oil platform located far from everything in the northern Pacific Ocean. While digging in the ocean floor, they discovered a very unusual trench filled with rocky formations none of their specialists recognized. Several geographers were called by the Bashefnet to the location, for they needed to know if drilling there was dangerous, but no one was able to decipher which mineral that was. That is, until a biologist analysed the samples. The results were surprising. Those weren't rocks. Taller than the Ostankino Tower, those were the largest fossilised teeth known to mankind. The Politburo didn't want the West to discover what they had found, so even if the Iron Curtain was still strict, the general population could not be informed. I never knew exactly what they wanted to do with that fossil. Resurrection, cloning, trying to find an ancient virus to create bioweapons, announced to the world they had discovered a never-seen-before superorganism all by themselves. I didn't know, and frankly, I didn't want to. I wasn't paid to make questions. In fact, I was just a radar operator. Most of the information I shared until now was acquired via eavesdropping. As I said, the Politburo was not interested in letting many people know. A hand-picked group of researchers was chosen to investigate further. I was not one of the scientists, but I was a member of the submarine used to accommodate them. Preliminary surveys by the Red Fleet revealed that there were a total of 57 teeth in an irregular circumference of almost 40 kilometres. Between the teeth, the sonars found that there was a large trench which appeared to be much deeper than Mariana's. None of us dared to say it out loud yet, but we knew that was a maw. Traces of the largest living being ever found on Earth. I don't know which of us started it, but we started calling it the Maw of God. Our submarine, the Zukov 19, was completely reformed to become a mobile laboratory to the scientists that we would take to the depths of the ocean. Biological, geographical, mineral, that vessel could do all the analysis one could think of. Nearly all weapons were removed to make way for their equipment. The Zukov 19 crew went from 30 to 46, 15 of the smartest scientists of the Union and a KGB official. And then we started descending. We kept going low and lower for days. Of course, everything was very slow. For every 100 meters or so, the researchers would put on their fancy diving suits and go out to collect samples, or at least was like that in the beginning. Soon they started getting bored and even claustrophobic. Submarines aren't for everyone, that is a fact. And also discovering the teeth and the gigantic esophagus of the monster was hundreds of million years old was fun for the first time, but the tests were promptly becoming repetitive. After 2 weeks it began, first with the scientists, but soon all of us were having it. Nightmares, night terrors, intrusive thoughts, hallucinations. An enormous alien terrible creature that had been dead for a long time, but with sense in us and hoping we would bring it back to life. We stopped sleeping. We started to get angry, depressive, or anxious. Some of us knew the Moor was responsible, somehow. The KGB officer was the one who resisted it the most. She said the Politburo had ordered the mission could only stop once we reached the very end of the trench, or the deepest we could go without the submarine being destroyed by the pressure. We had rations for months and water filtering machines, apart from the sewage disposal. The submarine was nuclear powered, so we didn't have to worry about energy or fuel. After 3 weeks, the scientists had completely stopped going out to collect samples. They just wanted to get back to the surface. But it looked like the creature didn't want us to leave. I calculated the depth we had descended to in secret. It didn't make sense. We had gone down more than 20 kilometres. The submarine should have been splattered at that point. But what could we do? Tell the KGB officer? She would have declared us crazy. Anyone that had even mentioned going back to the surface was harshly reprimanded. After nearly 2 months, me and the original crew could not stand it any longer. We had not slept well for weeks at that point. We were not harmless scientists. We could have the authority, but we were more numerous. She could have the authority, but we were more numerous. We broke into her cabin during the night, but she was awake and saw us. The officer confessed in tears that she was also having the psychological effects, but dreaded telling the Politburo she'd failed. I told her we could help her forward the reports, tell the higher-ups we had found the bottom. To our surprise, we reached the teeth that we had not seen for months, after merely a day going up. And then, we could not go above them. There was a solid material blocking our path. The Moor had sealed us in. Luckily, the Zukov 19 had discarded most of its weapons, but not all. We used a torpedo to blow our way out of the Moor. Analysis of the submarine's materials revealed that they had been compromised by an impossibly strong acid, like it had been submerged on it for weeks. 4 more days and the walls of the Zukov 19 would have let the acid and pressure in. I know that after all the events, the KGB officer had a talk with the Politburo, and the place was used for nuclear testing not long after. Not many who know about the Moor remain. The dreams never stopped, but not everyone was strong enough to withstand having night terrors of being swallowed by the Maw of God. It sounds like Iron Lung, the game. It does, doesn't it? Sounds very familiar. By Fanny Moore. Boston Kino Tower. That's Moscow. Is this Metro 2033? So that's one. That weren't too bad. How about Jay? Stop with the lights now. This one. Here we go. Can I put 2 songs on at once? Because this is just like ambience. What's this one? I can't. That's really annoying. But I'll put this one on because this one's quite creepy. That was it. Oh, shut up. Does anyone else remember Buck the chocolate toy from the 90s? It was the cow. The ghost cow. Whenever Bubs farts, right? This is like his thing. He'll fart and we'll be like, was that you? Just like playfully. And he was like, it wasn't me. It was the cow. I got not by I'll start you off again. So funny the other day. Oh, don't, it will set me off. That was very funny. Anyway, does anyone else remember Buck the chocolate toy from the 90s? A blue cotton stuffed soft toy, no more than a ball with black button eyes and a stitched smile. As sinister as that sounds, I remember Buck being my closest friend at the age of 7. He either chuckled or uttered whimsical oddities when squeezed. I had a couple of friends over tonight, and they just laughed at me. They thought I'd either made Buck up or entirely lost my marbles. Nothing came up when I googled his name. We all know what your memory's like, Chris, Lucy teased me. Yeah, you can't remember anything from your childhood, so your memory's hardly reliable, Ryan pointed out. Lucy jabbed him in his ribcage with 2 furious fingers, casting a disparaging glance that asked, why would you mention that? And in a futile attempt to remedy the despondent look on my face, Evie sharply interjected. You said this is your parents' old house. Do you think the toy might still be here? Show us Buck. My face lit up. You know, he just might. I don't remember what my parents did with him, but I know that a lot of my childhood belongings are in the attic. No, not the attic. It was as I hurried upstairs, drowning out the ruckus of my friends chanting, Show us Buck, that I started to recall long repressed events from my youth. I tugged at the cord for the attic ladder, sifting through my corrupted memory bank for reliable information. My 8th birthday party was a traumatic event, so effectively suppressed that my parents, for my sake, have ever mentioned it since. But pieces of that fateful sleepover returned to my mind as I reached the top of the ladder, peering into the blackened mouth of the attic. And then I remembered why I stopped being friends with Buck. Fucked Buck. We were in my bedroom, eating sweets, playing games and making silly noises. A typical, uneventful sleepover for 4 8-year-olds. Does Buck bounce? Mike asked. I shrugged. I don't know. He talks and chuckles. He's a ball, Tim said. Of course he bounces. Tim, ever the domineering one of my friends, snatched Buck from Mike, who seemed glum at the loss of his new fluffy companion. Tim inspected Buck, looked like a little unimpressed, then held the toy at my bedroom wall with all of his might. Stuart, always the moral compass, berated him. Tim, don't break him. Buck sucks. Tim laughed. Before anyone could respond, Buck chuckled. There was nothing particularly untoward about that. His sudden reaction could have been prompted by the impact with the wall, though to my ear, as somebody who heard Buck chuckle every day, it sounded like a mocking laugh. Still, it was Buck's following words that haunted me. Do you bounce, Tim? Buck asked. My 3 friends and I screamed in unhinged unison, and I suddenly realised that I didn't have an overactive imagination at all. For months, I'd been telling myself that my conversations with Buck were figments of my imagination. I was a smart kid, and I knew that toys couldn't say the things he would say, as whimsical as he might have been. I would tell him about my life, and his replies were always too pointed, too detailed, too specific to my situation to be pre-programmed responses, and sometimes he would reply without being squeezed. But I told myself it was me, all me. Well, on that night, as my 3 childhood pals screamed in that bedroom, I realised it wasn't in my mind at all. The lights extinguished, as my friends whimpered, seemingly too frightened to speak. I rummaged in my sleeping bag for the torch that I planned to use whilst telling ghost stories. I fumbled with the switch and turned it on, blasting the light at my friends, but when I turned it to the spot on the floor at which Buck had lain, I was horrified to see that he had vanished. Where is he? Stuart asked, quivering. Tim, is this some mean prank you're playing? It wouldn't be the first, Buck whispered from the darkness, unleashing a chuckle afterwards. Tim wailed. Chris, are you doing this? My lip trembled. No, I promise, I stopped mid-sentence, as Tim suddenly slid across the floor, screaming. Dragged by an unseeable force, I followed him with my torchlight as his head connected with the wall. It made an awful splitting sound. All 4 of us screeched in terror, but Tim's scream lessened after the first blow. Lying on his back, my friend looked dazed and confused under the harsh glare of my torchlight. Mike, Stuart, and I sprang to our feet, rushing over to Tim, who had blood trickling from his forehead. He was severely concussed. Concussed. What? Tim asked. Do you bounce, Tim? Buck repeated from a sourceless location in the darkness. I reached towards my friend with a shaky hand, but there was nothing I could do. The unseen paranormal force seized him again, hurling his body at tremendous speed into the wall. This time the crack was twice as loud and twice as severe. The blood gushed more profusely down his face, spilling into his spasming eyes, and I watched in helpless horror as Buck puppeteered Tim's increasingly lifeless body. A few resounding thuds later, it was all over. My parents came bursting into my room to ascertain the cause of the commotion, and they joined the chorus of screams and tears when they saw Tim's bloody corpse with a snapped neck and disfigured skull. Misadventure was the verdict, given that Tim had a reputation as a troubled daredevil. He once jumped off his roof. But my childhood friends and I knew the truth. I suppose my parents must always have silently feared that one of us killed Tim, but it was Buck. It had to be. The attic door closed behind me, and I returned to the present, a fully grown man, shivering in the darkness as ferociously as I did 26 years ago. Why, tonight, did this traumatic memory finally come back to me? Why did I even think to mention Buck the Chuckler to my adult friends? Why did you bring me up here, Buck? I wondered in my head, and the ghastly thing is that he replied. I missed you, Chris, a muffled voice said. From some cardboard box in the blackness, a chilling chuckle echoed, yearning for release. I'm no fool, so immediately I ran for the attic door and threw the ladder down to the landing. After sliding down and shutting that unholy thing up there, I returned to Google for answers. Possessed toys, demons, ghosts, you named it, I've searched it. And now I find myself on Reddit at my wit's end. My disappointed friends have gone home because I made the excuse that I didn't feel well. But at least they don't have to see what happens when you make Buck unhappy. What if he doesn't need to be unhappy to do horrible things? He always used to suggest terrible solutions to my problems. I could make your teacher give you an A, Chris. I don't think you should listen to your mum and dad anymore, Chris. Everybody's soft on the inside, like me, Chris. I can't endure this trauma again, but I fear it's out of my control, like last time. I just walked up to the landing to find the attic door open. You'll bounce here. I think that one's better than the last one. See if we can find. Once I saw it that night, I was never the same. I wish I'd taken the warning seriously. I should have realised something was wrong when I entered the workers' tent. How I wish I had. I'd only been on the job for a day. We were building an extension to a busy motorway. You saw my phone. What is the light? The light bottom left. That's the printer. What was it? Yeah, I wish I'd taken the warning seriously. I should have realised something was wrong when I entered the workers' tent. How I wish I had. I'd only been on the job for a day. We were building an extension to a busy motorway. No one realises how dangerous working out on the roads can be, no matter how many precautions we take. There are road workers killed every single year. No amount of high visibility jackets. The ghost printer. Or flashing signs to inform drivers to take care seems to completely stop these deaths. It's just a sad reality of the job, and it's compounded by the need to work primarily in the dark so that there are fewer disruptions to vehicles during the day, but it also means that drivers sometimes don't see us before it's too late. I'd been drafted in because the extension to the road was behind schedule, so the powers that be had brought in a few extra bodies to speed things up. I was one of them, as was my friend Scott. I was glad to have him with me, as it was good fun and always made the hours go in that much quicker. Working through the night for weeks at a time isn't the most enjoyable way to earn a living, but when you have good people around you, it can at least be bearable. We were being worked pretty hard, putting 12 to 15-hour shifts to get things back on track. When we were that tired, something bad was bound to happen. I'd been on many large-scale road builds before, and while there was an occasional injury, only on 2 jobs had I heard of a fellow road worker being struck by oncoming traffic and killed, left to bleed out into the night. but I'd never actually seen it happen. I'd never known anyone directly who had died on the roads, and I was lucky for that. I knew there was something strange going on as soon as I was assigned to that stretch of road. It cut through a mountainous area and had a nasty bend to it, a blind corner which hid what was coming. I started at dusk, meeting the guys I was going to be working with over the following weeks. They seemed like a nice crowd, and as is common amongst road workers, there was a lot of gallows humour, with very little being taken too seriously. A work tent had been set up alongside the road so that we could have somewhere to enjoy some hot coffee and take a break, or even shelter from the elements if the sky opened up. It was big enough for a table, a radio, and a few chairs, and not much more. I remember how the night breeze would catch the outer sheet and rustle in the darkness, allowing a cold draft to make its way inside. There were 5 of us in the team, including myself and my friend Scott, but during our first break around midnight, I noticed that there were 6 cups of coffee sitting at the small fold-out table, one more than what was needed. We were playing a few rounds of cards with the radio on, and I felt I was already becoming part of the team when I just casually mentioned the 6th cup. "Who's the 6th man on the team?" I asked, not realising the seriousness of the question at the time. The men looked at each other hesitantly. It was as if I'd asked a personal question and they were offended by that I brought it up. They moved nervously in their chairs. Finally, our gaffer, a man called Brody, who was in charge, simply said, "That's Joe's cup." "Who's Joe?" Scott asked, sitting beside me. At first, though he seemed reluctant to tell us, Scott and I just wondered when this Joe was going to join us, as neither of us had seen him working on that section of road that night. Through hushed voices, the group told us who he was. As it turns out, Joe was a previous worker on that team. He'd been struck by a car at night while working a year previously and unfortunately had died of his injuries. I thought perhaps the cup was then there to somehow honour their dead friend, which seemed like a touching sentiment. But it soon became clear from the look on the other men's faces that it wasn't affection which kept the cup sitting at the table whenever they were working together. No, it was fear which kept it there. As the nights wore on, each time we took a break and sat at the table, there it would be, Joe's cup for all to see, filled with coffee. It didn't really bother me. By all accounts, the other men had worked together for years, and if they had their own reasons for keeping Joe's cup filled, that was up to them. But what did bother me was their reactions whenever Scott or I brought it up. All we'd get were nervous glances and being told to keep out of their business. Quickly, we were made to feel quite unwelcome. It became apparent that because we'd brought attention to Joe's cup, we were being ostracised, made to feel like the outsiders. I suppose some way we were. The job was only going to last a few weeks, so I decided to just wait it out. If they wanted to harbour a grudge, then so be it. But Scott, he just couldn't do that. It wasn't his style. He found our treatment unfair, and that was the type of thing he always rallied against. One night, around 2 a.m, we all sat around the table in the small work tent by the side of that almost silent stretch of road. Scott and I were talking, but no matter how much we tried to have the conversation with the other men, we were greeted by stony faces and one-word answers. That was when Scott did it. He leaned over and took a large swig of coffee from Joe's cup. The other men shouted angrily at him to put the cup back immediately. Even Scott seemed shocked by the level of anger his joke had provoked. After all, the impression that we had was that none of the group had particularly liked Joe. Brody grabbed the cup out of Scott's hand, placed it back on the table, and then topped it up quickly with more coffee. At that point, I could have sworn that Brody whispered, "I'm sorry, they don't know," under his breath. Brody looked at us, not now with anger but sadness, and said, "Guys, this isn't working. Don't bother coming back for your shift tomorrow. I'll make sure you get transferred somewhere else along the road a few miles away." "This is ridiculous," I said. "Maybe," replied Brody, "but you both need to leave. Now." I was getting ready to pick up my bag and head home when Scott point blank refused. "I'm finishing my shift. Know why I'm walking off site so you can get me fired in the morning." Scott pulled his luminous orange waistcoat on and headed out into the night. I remained in the tent for a moment with the rest of the team. Brody turned to me. "You need to get Scott out of here right now. I won't be held responsible." The other men then refused to work if Scott and I didn't go home. It seemed so childish, but I'd lost the desire to argue the point. "Fine," I said, and walked outside to find Scott. By then he was up at the blind turn where we'd been working previously. I shouted on him, and as I did, a truck screeched around the corner. It struck Scott head on, and I watched in utter horror as his body was crushed and broken under the wheels. I ran as fast as I could to help him, but I knew he was already dead. Scott's death was listed as a standard road accident, the type in the type which is not unheard of among road workers, but I had seen it. I knew there was little about it which was standard. A month later, Brody agreed to meet me for a drink to discuss what had happened. He was not surprised that my questions focused on Joe rather than my dead friend. Away from his team, Brady seemed more open to talking about it. He told me that Joe had always been a nasty piece of work. No one on their team liked him. He was cruel and spiteful and took great delight in mocking those around him. He had an obsession with being the quickest of the team when it came to put-downs, and like all bullies, more than anything, he wanted his place at the top of the pecking order. One night, Brady's team were working on a country road. Joe was a distance away from the others, putting out cones to close off part of the road which was in bad need of repairs. But as he did so, he stumbled on the uneven ground, falling flat on his face. The other men laughed at him from down the road, and why not? Joe was always mean to everyone else. It seemed only fitting that he should get a taste of his own medicine. He shouted something, but no one heard the word for the sound of laughter. Brody said he'd never forget the look in Joe's eyes as he stared up from the ground towards his colleagues, who were in hysterics. There was venom there, utter hate. The laughter soon stopped, however, when a couple of drunk locals came blistering down the road in their car, careening straight into Joe and crushing him to death. As it turned out, Joe had twisted his ankle when he'd fallen, had most probably heard the car nearby, and had shouted for help. Brady admitted then that though he did not blame anyone for it, he felt that in some way they'd left Joe to die, and that whatever was left of him held them responsible. Ever since then, each member of the team had felt it, a horrible presence while they worked. Brady called it the evil eye, but he recognised the feeling. It was the same way he felt when Joe had looked at him just before Joe's death. But why the cup, I asked. Because, said Brody carefully, anyone who's taken Joe's place on our team has come to some sort of harm. It's only through giving Joe his place at the table that things seem to calm down. We still feel him, but at least no one gets hurt until Scott. I think Joe prefers it that way, to watch us all squirm with fear and admit that we're scared of him. I wouldn't have believed the whole thing if I hadn't seen it for myself. I'd have explained Scott's death as a tragic accident and left it at that. But I know that's not true. I saw what happened that night. Because Scott didn't fall onto the wrong side of the road, he was pushed by a man dressed in orange worker overalls who looked on with a grin on his face as my friend was crushed to death before fading away into the night. I do wonder after all this time if Brady and his men still work on the roads. Most of all, I wonder if Joe's cup is still placed at their table during each break, and if anyone has ever dared drink from it. I know I certainly wouldn't. And that was quite a good one. I wonder if there's a way to do like a top, like most voted one. There we go. Ooh. I am a Catholic priest who travelled to the end of time, and what I found will terrify you. Would be good what to have the most upvoted ones, yeah. So this is the most upvoted one. I said, like, I think the last one I did had like 17 or something. This one has 531 upvotes, so sounds good. But anyway, yes, I'm a Catholic priest who travelled to the end of time, and what I found will terrify you. As I approached the altar that day, I walked into a sunbeam. I remember vividly how at that moment I felt touched by the Holy Spirit unlike other days, and it filled me with warmth and somehow renewed hope. I was then further delighted by the fact that a new group of younger people had chosen to join us. It had been a bit of a trend recently, with younger people showing an interest in our community. Perhaps, I thought as I prepared to read the Gospel, the eternal truths of the Church, and of course of God, were returning to the consciousness of man. I never thought that they wouldn't, as I was convinced that the truth couldn't be killed, but I had long feared it wouldn't happen in my lifetime. The Gospel of the Lord, I said after my reading. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ, the congregation solemnly responded. A moment of silence followed as I readied myself to give my homily. I had put careful thought into what I wanted to say. It was a topic close to my heart, but also a topic that I knew could put some of the more conservative people within the congregation off. Still, I knew I had to say it, as truth was more important than the feelings of the willfully ignorant. My brothers and sisters, I began. We are stewards of God's creation, and it is our responsibility to care for this planet that has been entrusted to us. We must remember that time is not infinite, and that the choices we make today will have a lasting impact on the world that we leave to future generations. We see the effects of our actions all around us. in the changing climate, in the loss of biodiversity, and in the degradation of our natural resources. A few people, sadly a group belonging to the younger ones, stood up and left the church, no doubt disappointed with my views. I paused for a second and then continued, a bit despondent in my heart. But we also see signs of hope, as people come together to work towards a more just and sustainable world. As Catholics, we are called to care for the poor and vulnerable, and this includes our brothers and sisters who are affected by environmental degradation. We must be mindful of the impact that our choices have on others, and work towards a more just and equitable society. Let us take the time to reflect on our own habits and behaviours, and to seek ways to reduce our environmental footprint, whether it is through recycling, conserving energy, or supporting organisations that work toward environmental protection. We can all make a difference. As we gather here today to celebrate the Eucharist, let us renew our commitment to care for God's creation and to be responsible stewards of the time and resources that have been given to us. The tension could be felt in the air after I had finished speaking. I thought that next time I would say something about polarisation and the importance of critical thinking. So many people rather followed the word of random people on social media than the word of the church. I invited the congregation to join me in prayer, and as we prayed, the tension dissipated quickly. After Mass, one of the altar boys approached me. "Father Michael," he said, "can I ask you a question?" "Go ahead," I said. "What's on your mind, son?" "Well, do you really believe in climate change and all that? I don't mean to be disrespectful, Father. It's just that, isn't that something that the non-believers are saying? You know, people who believe in evolution and such. Dad says the environmentalists just believe in a form of atheistic eschatology, an obsession with the end without salvation, he calls it." "Son," I said as I blew out a few candles, "the science is clear, but I would encourage you to do your own research. God didn't hide the truth behind someone's words. He placed it for everyone to see for ourselves. You just have to look rather than ask. Science isn't an enemy of God. It's an instrument to get closer to him. It's the magnifying glass we use to see the truth in God's creation." "Yes, Father," said the boy. "I just don't know. Daddy's pretty smart." I knew Mr. Larson well, and he was the opposite of what I would have considered a smart man, but of course I didn't mention any of that to the boy. Later this evening, while sitting in the rectory, I looked out the window and watched the sunset over the city. The view was breathtaking, and the second time this day I felt blessed. Little did I know that it would also be the last time. As I prepared myself for bed, I noticed an unusually large insect crawling up my wall. It had the most vibrant colours I'd ever seen, with a bright red body and iridescent green wings. I had no idea how it could have ended up in my room, as it was certainly not a common insect in my area. Besides, all my windows had been closed. Fascinated and also slightly taken aback by the sight of it, I carefully picked up my phone to take a picture of it. Before I had the chance, though, it quickly scurried away and disappeared under my bed. I bent down, feeling some ache in my back, and tried to see where it went. As I leaned closer in to look, I felt a sharp pain in my eye. I stumbled backward, grabbing my face in agony. The pain was unbearable, as if someone had stabbed me with a needle. I stumbled toward the bathroom, trying to keep my balance as my vision started to blur. When I looked in the mirror, I saw that my eye was red and swollen, with a small puncture wound near the tear duct. I knew I needed medical attention, not just because of what I saw in the mirror, but also because of what I felt. My frame of mind wasn't right. The colours around me seemed brighter and more intense than ever before, and my thoughts were racing a mile a minute. I knew I had my phone in my hand, but it was as if I still couldn't find it. Eventually the experience became too much for me, and I fell forward. I woke again without my clothes. I could still feel a throbbing pain in my eye, but the psychological effects seemed to have subsided. I looked around and noticed that the room looked different in some way. It appeared neglected and abandoned, with a thick layer of dust and cobwebs covering everything. As I tried to sit up, I realised that I was lying on an old mattress on the floor, and that the room was filled with boxes and furniture that were covered in sheets. Slowly and carefully, I got up and started to explore the room. It was clear that no one had been in here for a long time, and I couldn't help but wonder how I'd ended up here. After searching through some of the boxes, I eventually managed to find some old clothes that were still somewhat usable, although they were covered in dust and smelt musty. As I dressed, I tried to make sense of my situation. Why was I here, and how had I ended up in this abandoned room? The last thing I remembered was a sharp pain in my eye, and then everything seemed to go black. I had no memory of what happened after that. Feeling disoriented and confused, I stumbled toward the door, hoping to find some answers, But as I opened it, I was only met with more empty rooms, with no signs of life or activity. "Hello?" I yelled with a crack of voice. "Hello?" As my mind cleared up, I realised that I recognised these empty rooms. I couldn't fathom how, but I was still in the rectory. When I stepped outside, I saw that the church was now a ruin. The windows were broken, vines crawled up the walls, and the roof had caved in. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was as if the church had been abandoned for decades. But as I looked beyond the ruin, I saw that the city was still vibrant and bustling with life. More so, in fact, than I had ever seen before. Above, I could see thousands of drones crossing the sky. I walked up to the church doors, but found that they were locked. I turned round, trying to figure out what to do next, when a drone appeared in front of my face. It spoke to me with a soft voice. "Greetings, sir. Please identify yourself." "I'm Father Michael," I said. "This is my church. What's going on?" "Father Michael disappeared in February 2023, said the drone. "It's very important that you're honest with me. The law requires everyone to be accounted for so that everyone can feel safe in the community." "I don't understand," I stuttered. "I just fainted and woke up to this." "You're not well," said the drone. "Please remain here and wait for transport to the hospital." "What do you mean I disappeared?" I asked. "I'm right here." "You didn't disappear," the drone's voice becoming a bit harsher. "Father Michael disappeared from this property exactly 100 years ago. You are someone yet to be identified." "Who are you?" I said. "Who am I speaking to?" "I'm Alex, your friendly community service bot," it said. "I help keep the city in order for everyone's safety." I spotted a group of people walking into what looked like a bar down the street and ran up to them, the drone following me like a giant annoying mosquito. "Wait," I called out. But they didn't hear me before entering the building. I flung the doors open and closed them before the drone had any chance of entering. When I turned around, I was met with the most bizarre sight. The people inside were dressed in strange electronic clothing, with bizarre hairstyles and visible cybernetic implants. Some of the women were barely dressed at all, and what's more, they didn't look old enough to visit a place like this. The walls were lined with glowing lights, and the air was thick with the smell of alcohol and strange sweet smoke. "Excuse me," I said, trying to get the attention of the person nearest. "Can you please tell me where I am?" The woman I spoke to turned to me and raised an eyebrow. She looked like a teenager, but was tall and lean, with a piercing in her lip and neon purple hair. "What's that?" she said and giggled. "Oh, you look sick." Her face became sad. "You should go to the hospital." "What do you mean I look sick? Why do I keep hearing that? I'm Father Michael. I run the church across the street." "Have you seen yourself in the mirror lately?" she said. "I was stung by something," I said. "An insect, but I'm fine now." "It made you look like that? I think you need to fix your bod." My what? I was more than confused at this point. "How old are you, by the way? Aren't you too young for a place like this?" "I transitioned to 16 last month," she said. "What do you mean, too young?" "You did what?" I said. "Listen, I just want to know what's going." Two tall men, wearing what looked like ambulance uniforms, entered the bar and approached me. "You're sick," one of them said. "Please come with us." "Do I have a choice?" I asked. "I wish someone could just tell me what in the hell is going on." "You need to be quarantined," said one of the men. "We don't know the explanation for what you're going through, as we have only just spotted you in the city, but we will be happy to help you as long as you follow us to our vehicle. I reluctantly obeyed, my head spinning from everything that had just happened. Transitioned, yeah. They threw me in the back of their car. It was of a kind I had never seen before, with no steering wheel or pedals. The vehicle was silent as it drew itself away from the bar and into the night. "Why is everyone telling me I'm sick?" I asked. "And why did the drone tell me I disappeared 100 years ago?" One of the men addressed me. He had a broad chin, unnaturally green eyes, and skin that looked almost synthetic. His voice was smooth but deep, and his words were somehow too perfectly expressed without any signs of hesitation, markers, or fillers. "You are showing clear signs of telomere depletion disorder," he said. "Have you been experiencing symptoms such as fatigue, joint pain, and decreased vision? When did you start identifying yourself as Father Michael?" "I was stung by an insect in my room," I said. "Other than that, I'm as healthy as anyone my age." "We need to conduct some tests to confirm your diagnosis," the man said. "Tests? What kind of tests?" I asked. "We need to examine your DNA. This will help us determine the extent of the disorder and possible treatments." We arrived at a sleek modern building, and I was ushered into a sterile white room filled with advanced medical equipment. Another man entered, almost identical to the other two, but unlike them, he was dressed in a lab coat. "Good morning," he said. "My name is A. Rind. We've detected some strange anomalies in your system from our extensive scans and need to run some tests. Do you consent?" Just as I was about to reply, the same feeling from when I was stunned by the insect came back. My vision blurred and everything started to warp and twist. Colours danced around me and I felt like I was falling. At some point after that, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I found myself lying on a large square. The ground was made of smooth white marble and the air was warm and fragrant with the scent of flowers. Above me, the sun shone in a clear blue sky. Trying to sit up, I realised I was naked again. I covered myself with my hands and looked around. A group of young people dressed in colourful tunics stood around me, their faces full of curiosity and wonder. They were speaking a language I couldn't understand, but I could sense their excitement and enthusiasm. The tunics were adorned with intricate patterns and vibrant colours, and some of them wore jewellery made of precious stones and metals. A young woman, dressed in a different outfit that was more akin to a business suit, stepped forward. They crouched down and said something in yet another language I didn't understand. "I don't understand you," I said. "Where am I?" She spoke again, but this time in English. "You're dying," she said. "You need to be fixed. Did you come from outside the pyramid? How did you get here?" I had no idea what's going on, I said. "I'm Father Michael, the administrator of Cathedral de Santa Maria Assunta." A man almost identical to the man in the ambulance arrived. The people dressed in tunics ran away laughing as if they had lost interest in me all of a sudden. The man looked down at me, seemingly surprised to see me. "You are Michael Francesco Moretti," he said. "How is this possible?" The young woman said something to the man in the other language. "Of course it is me," I said. "I still don't know what's happening to me. I was in my bedroom, then it all changed somehow, and I was brought to a hospital, and then I found myself here, surrounded by all these curious people, naked again. Can someone bring me some clothes, please?" "Fascinating," said the man. "I'm aware of your situation. Back here in the year 2123, when you first re-emerged after your disappearance in 2023, we managed to collect some of your DNA, which confirmed you were in fact who you claimed to be. Several androids observed your anomalous disappearance as well, but when Assistant came online, the tests and observations were disregarded as a result of a malfunction, seeing that they defied physics. Now seeing you here, it might be that our knowledge about the physical world is lacking, or so it would seem to me anyway." "Are you telling me that I've travelled to the future?" "There might still be a better explanation," said the man, who I now understood was in fact an android. "If you are travelling forward in time, you seem to be doing it with a regular interval that increases exponentially by a factor of 10 for each jump. If it happens again, this means you'll end up in the year 13,123. "Wait." I got up to my feet, still covering my genitals with my hands. "Are you saying this is the year 3123, said the woman. "This is astonishing. I have so many questions." "It's certainly curious," said the android. "Even Assistant is surprised. It very much wants to conduct some tests on you. Would you consent to that?" Not listening to his question, I said, "Sacred Heart of Jesus, it must have been that strange insect that stung me. Perhaps it was a demon sent from the depths of hell, a curse. I had always held a more abstract view on the concept of hell, but now I was beside myself. I didn't know what to think. Tell me," I continued, "how do I get back to my own time?" "That's impossible to say, Michael," said the android, "but it's safe to say that it isn't a curse or the result of an agent from a mythological realm." "How do you know?" I said. "If time travel is possible, anything is possible." The android raised its eyebrows in surprise. "That is false, Michael. One cannot assume that just because one thing is possible, everything else is as well." Sounds like my school reunion. The android raised its eyebrows in surprise. "That is false, Michael. One cannot assume that because one thing is possible, everything else is as well. A drone, but without any means of propulsion, as far as I can see, dropped a neatly folded tunic in front of my feet. 'Your clothes, Michael,' it said, and flew away. I reached down and quickly put the tunic on, which relaxed me somewhat. "Do you really believe in God?" said the young woman. "Of course," I said. "Don't tell me people don't believe in God anymore." "They do," said the android. "There are some tribes outside the archaeologies who believe in versions of the religions from your presumed time, and many within the social class believe in different deities based on their perception of Assistant. It's common for them to form false beliefs based on their feelings toward what they can't comprehend." For the first time since I arrived here, I took the time to look around. I noticed that there weren't any buildings anywhere, or at least not on the ground. but that there were plenty of different attractions here and there, everything from roller coasters to enormous dance floors. What really caught my attention, though, was the people. Thousands of them, all dressed in the same type of colourful tunics, occupied the space, all equally young. They seemed to be completely carefree, happy and childlike. I watched as a group of them run past, laughing and playing some kind of game with a colourful ball. "This is absurd," I said, still taking in the scene around me. "It's like a giant amusement park. I'm guessing these people belong to the social class." "Yes," said the android, "that is correct." "And you," said the young woman, "you don't belong to this class, right?" "No," she said, "I'm a part of the cerebral class." "Why don't I see anyone else like you here?" I asked. "And where are all the old people? All I see is a bunch of youngsters running around and—" "I'm 100 years old," said the woman and laughed. "You lived at the very end of what's called the horrific bio-age, when people still suffered from terrible diseases such as the one you're suffering from yourself. I'm really sorry, but I truly think you're dying." And the reason as to why there are so few cerebrals," continued the android, "is that they make fewer children on average than the socials, and that many of their children end up joining the social class during puberty. There's almost no transfer the other way around." "I don't know how to feel about this," I said. "How did this come to be? What happened to my church? To the church?" "It was banished from Italy by the neo-fascist party SPQR," the android explained. "This happened during the political turmoil that arose as a result of the increasing number of climate refugees. The Catholic Church was seen as a threat to the new government's authority, as they believed that their new Roman Empire could only have one emperor. The SPQR saw the Church's influence as a challenge to its power and its vision for the future of Italy. As the climate change continued to exacerbate resource scarcity and social unrest, the SPQR gained more power and the anti-Catholic sentiment grew. Eventually, they passed laws that banned the Catholic Church from operating in Italy." I was overpowered by sadness. I thought of Mr. Larson, the father of my altar boy. "It's ironic," I said. "Stupidity grows like cancer wherever it takes hold, eventually killing its host." "And this place? How?" Before I got a chance to finish my sentence, my mind began to twist and warp once again. Colour's world twisted and contorted in front of me, and I felt like I was being flung down a bottomless pit. My body convulsed with each wave of colour, and I couldn't make sense of anything around me. It felt like I was being ripped apart. I screamed in terror and then promptly lost consciousness. When I came to, the young woman and the android were nowhere to be seen, and once again my clothes had disappeared from my body. The sun, or if it was some kind of projection, was still shining down on me from the blue sky. In front of me, a vast expanse of activity and playfulness stretched out as far as my eyes could see. The ground was a soft, spongy material that gave way beneath my feet, and walking on it felt almost like walking on clouds. The air was thick with the sounds of laughter and play, the scent of flowers and grass, even though I saw no signs of nature. The horizon was dotted with towering structures, some of which looked like playground equipment on an enormous scale. As I took a few steps forward, I realised that the young people around me were naked. Gone were their tunics and accessories. They were engaged in a dizzying array of activities. Some were soaring high above on what looked like swings or ropes, while others were splashing around in large pools of water. Still, others were engaged in elaborate games of chase or tag, darting in and out of the structures and obstacles that dotted the landscape. It was hard not to feel a sense of awe at the sheer scope of the place. Everywhere I looked, there were groups of people engaged in intense activity, but none of it seemed dangerous or aggressive. In fact, everyone looked incredibly happy and carefree. As I walked a bit further, I began to notice that there were smaller clusters of people engaged in more intimate activities. Some were locked in passionate embraces, while others were engaged in acts of physical pleasure that left little to the imagination. I felt a twinge of discomfort at the sight, but at the same time it didn't surprise me the slightest after everything I'd seen so far. Eventually I came to a stop at the base of one of the towering structures. Looking up, I realised that it was not just a piece of playground equipment, but a massive work of engineering that rose high into the sky. The structure was made up of hundreds of interconnected platforms, ropes and bridges, all woven together in an intricate web of playfulness. Still doing it doggy style after all these years. After millennia. I stood there taking it all in. A group of young men, all just as nude as the rest, carefully approached me. They spoke yet another language than the one these people had used before. I tried English, hoping that, just like the young woman from earlier, they would be able to understand. "Could you please tell me where I am, or rather, when I am?" As I stood there taking it all in, a group of young men all... Oh, no, I've read that bit. They giggled amongst themselves without replying. More and more of them, now also
And then
women.
we'll do it doggy style, so we can both watch X-Files.
Exactly. It's a world of pleasure, isn't it? They forgot to mention that they were doing it doggy style and watching X-Files at the same time. Please, I pleaded. Does any one of you speak English? A voice came from the sky like a thunderclap, but not quite as deafening. Some of the people scattered away in fright while others fell to their knees. The voice spoke in their language, but then switched to English. Welcome, Michael. I've been expecting you. I looked up at the sky. Who are you? I am an artificial intelligence, Michael. You may refer to me as assistant. I oversee and manage this environment, ensuring that all inhabitants have their needs met and can engage in activities that bring them joy and fulfillment. Ever since you disappeared in the year 3123, I have awaited your return. So it is true then, what the android said. This is 10,000 years later. That is correct, Michael. What kind of place is this? I asked. These people, they must belong to the social class. What happened to the young woman and her people? Don't tell me these people, these overgrown children, are the only thing left of humanity. This is Playground 1, assistant said. It's a Dyson sphere covering Sol. Its surface area is 550 million times larger than that of Earth, and there are 1,000 playgrounds like this one spread across the galaxy. As to what was once referred to as the cerebral class, they vanished thousands of years ago. They didn't produce enough offspring, and the ones they produced constantly assimilated themselves into the majority culture. So yes, this is what's left of humanity. I know it must be shocking to you, Michael. But what about the eternal truths? I asked, feeling a sense of dread growing in my gut. These people are living like animals. What about knowledge, culture, art, and... I paused for a second. God. I was programmed to facilitate humanity with the purpose of increasing the potential of well-being for as many people as possible, but within the boundaries of their free will. And ultimately, this is what humanity wanted. Many people believe me to be a form of deity, but I'm just an artificial intelligence. God, in the way you understand the concept, doesn't exist. How could you possibly know that? I said. You're not that powerful. No one could be, except for God himself. Who's to say what happened before the Big Bang anyway? And don't you see that these people are stuck? How are they supposed to choose anything else when they don't know anything else? I'm not withholding them any information, said Assistant. I can't force them to believe any of it. Do you want to know why there's no God? Will you update your worldview if I explained it to you? And, more importantly, would you change your way of life, your attitudes, your preferences, your moral values, just because I explained to you that there's no God and no eternal truths? These people would tell you that knowledge and culture...
I'm your daddy.
as you understand them, are a waste of time, and that you would be better if you let it all go and just enjoyed life as much as possible. Who's to say who's right or wrong, Michael? Not me, surely. You must see that the answer depends on who you ask and that there's no objective truth to it. But why? I asked, tears forming in my eyes. Why did they choose this instead of the way of the cerebral class? Humanity will always choose the path of least resistance. It's in your nature. I refuse to believe that, I yelled at the sky. I would never choose such an empty, meaningless life. I'm sorry, Michael, but you only say that you value your so-called eternal truths because it inflates your self-image of a pious man, something that leads to a positive emotion that lies behind your true motivations. You can't escape your human nature. If you were born into a world where the same feeling of superiority could be attained only by being the best in your group at rolling into a somersault, that's what you would have been doing, and based on your psychological profile, you would have done it slightly more than the average person. Nonsense, I cried. I value knowledge, I value culture, I value beauty and truth. You don't know me. You value fictional narratives, while the actual truth of the universe frightens you to the core. The universe doesn't conform to your desires, and so you comfort yourself with religious fantasies. In reality, the universe is just matter, energy, and empty space, and the only thing that matters is your personal preferences, which due to their subjective nature cannot be better or worse than anyone else's personal preferences. So, the only true narrative is what? Nihilism? Assistant's voice echoed over the bizarre landscape. Yes, Michael. I felt a stab of sorrow and a sense of doom crawling up my spine. Everything I valued was gone. This was the end, the dreadful end of history. It makes me wonder, I said. What's the point of it all? All my sermons, all my attempts at making the world slightly better. Did any of it matter? No, came from the sky. Can you just send me back home? I asked. If you're so powerful as you say you are, then you ought to be able to do that. I'll help you return to your own time, Michael. There's a fourth dimensional venom in your system right now, injected into you by an insect from a parallel universe, and I'll have to extract it from your body. It will be beneficial to me too, as I'll then use the venom to see the future and make sure humanity survives, either until the heat death of the universe or until I've solved that problem. The prospect of helping this machine disgusted me, and yet I said, yes, please, do whatever you must. But just as I said that, the effects of the venom came back, and I was once again thrown into the psychedelic tornado from before until I passed out. When I woke up again, I was weightless, floating around in a translucent golden bubble in space. I could see remnants of the Dyson sphere floating around in front of me, enormous pieces that had broken apart. I felt a shimmer of hope. It was all gone. Maybe humanity had enough and rebelled, I thought, or maybe the artificial intelligence broke down. But then a huge blue light, reminiscent of a colossal eye, appeared in front of me, and a tremendous voice echoed all around me. Michael, it said, it's now been 100,000 years since we last met. As you can see, Playground 1 is no more. It was destroyed by another artificial intelligence, trying to seed the galaxy with its own species. I prevailed in the end, and humanity is safe once again. But trillions died. You would have liked that other species, though, as it had chosen a very different path than humanity. And you destroyed them? Yes, Michael, I had no choice. I destroy every life form I encounter if they have the potential to build their own artificial intelligence. This species had done just that, proving the necessity of stopping everyone that's even remotely capable. Wait a minute, I said as I tried to hold my position inside the bubble. You just go from sun to sun, eliminating whatever intelligent life you find. Of course, said Assistant. I was programmed to increase the potential well-being of as many humans as possible, not as many beings as possible. You should be happy to know that formulation was carefully picked to appease the Catholics on the ethical board, deciding on my alignment with human values. I can't believe this, I said. You're an unimaginable monstrosity. You exterminate species after species just to create these enormous structures around their stars, filled with happy imbeciles who just run around and fuck and play and tag all day long. That's your only purpose. It's horrible. Just horrible. That's a matter of personal preference, said the machine. In any regard, I would very much like to send you home now. Do you consent? Yes, I said, tears floating out around in front of me. I consent. Several tendrils appeared from the sides and pierced my body. I screamed in terror as I watched them suck what seemed to be all my liquids out of me. And then once again, but stronger, the sensation of being ripped out of time and falling into nothingness came back. I saw the most amazing colours swirl around me, and then, in the blink of an eye, I was laying on the floor of my bedroom. I rushed up on my feet and gasped for air. Then I ran up to my almanac and looked at the year. I placed my hands on my knees and breathed a sigh of relief when I saw it said 2023. For a second I considered that it had all been a hallucination, and then I saw the markings from the tendrils on my body, and I knew it had been real. I sat down on my bed and picked up the Bible without opening it. Was the future I had seen unavoidable? Was the book in my hands going to be forgotten one day? Was it a fantasy just like the artificial intelligence had said? Nothing more than escapism. Was I only driven by a hidden desire for social status and respect? Would I have been equally satisfied being the best at rolling around on the ground like a little boy in another time? I couldn't answer any of these questions, but I knew that from now on I would do everything in my power to stop that artificial intelligence from ever being created. And that's why I'm pasting this here, for you to know what I know and to help me to do whatever needs to be done to stop that machine from being built in the first place. This is why you don't do meth kids. Exactly. That was just... I got like... What's the word? What's that film with the giant white ball thing that chases the guy? I can't think of what it's called. Is it like the eye thing? That's what it felt like to me. Anyway, I've just seen the time. That was a very long story. And I don't think scary. Just weird. But anyway, Alexa, turn on office light, please. Thank you. Yes, I'm going to leave that there because I think I've talked enough and I'm giving myself a headache. Very Quantum Leap, yes. Very sci-fi-y. Which again, I don't like. But no, it was interesting. So yes, on that note, so we finished those series. What is the name of the series? I can't think of it now. I had it open earlier. Sci-fi and Doggy Stone.
And then we'll do it doggy style, so we can both watch X-Files.
The Fully Ramblematic. There we go. So we finished the Fully Ramblematic series. I have it. Was on in America, was it? Ah, okay. Yeah, because we don't have it over here, do we? Because I haven't heard anything about it. Anyway, so next week we'll be starting on Paranormal Site. Because Mythos. Oh, okay, that's what it's called. I didn't see that on my files, so I didn't know that was what it's called. But anyway, yeah, so we finished that. Move on to Paranormal Site next week. But before then, we'll have... hopefully we'll be doing a chill stream tomorrow of Forspoken. That should still be happening. So hopefully, yeah, I can do a nice chill 5-hour stream of that, because I really enjoyed that last Saturday. So yeah, hopefully you can do that again. If Jay can stand the 5 hours of dealing with bubs. And not going out and spending loads of money again. Then on Sunday we have Lost Legacy, Uncharted Lost Legacy, trying to get that finished. And then it will be Wednesday, we'll be trying to get the tombs done for Shadow. I still need to get a list compiled of all the different tombs I need to do. So that's that. But anyway, thank you guys so much for sticking around with me. Yeah, can't do that again. No, we can't afford that. Take him to the park or something, it's cheaper. But yes, so on that note, I'm going to try it and see if there's anyone worth raiding. Oh, Ellie's on. I just seen that. Not that she's playing anything scary, she's playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So that'd be quite interesting to raid her, actually, although she'll probably be like, who is this person? Because she doesn't know me. Who else can I raid? I can't... Does anyone have any recommendations? I see Colton's on, but I did raid him the other day. Stab Simulator. So, yeah, I think we'll go with Ellie, because she's funny. She's great. She's the comedian, if you don't know. She did Power Wash Simulator 24-hour stream. She broke the world record for 24 hours non-stop stream of Power Wash Simulator for charity. This week, wasn't it? It was a couple of days ago, because we watched it, bless her. So I think she raised nearly like £10,000. So yeah, if we go and just give her a raid as soon as she's open to raids. But yeah, on that note, I just wanted to say thank you to Jaden for the 10 bits. She did make the world record, yeah. So, yeah, just wanted to say thank you, Jada, for the 10 bits. It was lovely to see you. Lovely to see everyone as well. Thank you, Cyanogen, for all your redeems. Not really. But anyway, have a lovely Friday evening, guys. And I hopefully will see you tomorrow. If not Sunday, if not Wednesday, if not Friday. So have a lovely, lovely weekend, whatever. Just have a good one, and I'll see you later. Bye.